What if I told you one of the most important trucks in American history wasn't fast, wasn't flashy, and most people today have never even heard of it? Why do collectors get excited over polished muscle cars, but quietly chase down an old wooden bedwork like it's hidden treasure? And how did a machine built for farms, dirt roads, and heavy labor become one of the most overlooked legends in classic American cars history? Because this isn't just any truck. This is the 1948 Chevrolet 3800 series stake-bed truck, a vehicle that didn't just drive on American roads. It helped rebuild an entire nation. Now picture this for a second. It's 1948. The war is over. Millions of soldiers are coming home. Factories that once built tanks and weapons are suddenly shifting gears, trying to build something new, something hopeful. America wasn't chasing speed back then. It wasn't chasing style. It was chasing survival, a growth, and a fresh start. Small businesses were opening everywhere. Farmers were expanding their land. Construction crews were rebuilding towns from the ground up. And in the middle of all that, there was one thing everyone needed. A truck that could handle anything. Not something pretty. Not something luxurious. Something tough. Something reliable. Something that wouldn't quit when the job got hard. And that's exactly where Chevrolet stepped in. In 1947, they introduced something new, the advanced design trucks. And leading that charge into 1948 was the 3800 series. This wasn't your average pickup. This was a 1-ton workhorse built to carry heavy loads, take abuse, and keep going day after day without complaint. While other vehicles were starting to experiment with comfort and design, this truck stayed focused on one thing: getting the job done, no matter what. And then there was the stake bed. At first glance, it looked simple, a flat wooden bed with removable side panels. But back then, that design was genius. Farmers could load crops, hay, or equipment in seconds. Businesses could haul lumber, tools, or crates without limits. It adapted to whatever job needed to be done. It wasn't just a truck. It was a solution. Under the hood, it was just as practical. A rugged inline-six engine built for reliability, not speed. The kind of engine that would start early in the morning and keep running until the sun went down. Day after day. Year after year. And if something broke, you didn't need anything fancy. You fixed it yourself. That's the kind of trust this truck built. And that's why it became part of everyday life across America. But here's where the story gets real. This truck didn't live in showrooms. It lived on dusty backroads in farmlands, on early morning job sites. It showed up before sunrise and left after dark. Picture a farmer in the late 1940s. Cold air, rough ground, long day ahead. And sitting there, ready to go, is that same stake bed truck loaded with tools, feed, maybe even a fresh harvest waiting to be delivered. No hesitation. Just turn the key and it goes. That kind of reliability wasn't a luxury. It was survival. And that's what made it different from the classic American cars people celebrate today. It didn't exist to impress. It existed to support. Small business owners used it to move goods across town. Builders hauled lumber and supplies to growing neighborhoods. Families used it when they needed something that could carry more than life would normally allow. And when something becomes that reliable, that common, that essential, people stop noticing it. It fades into the background. While the 1950s and 60s brought louder, faster, more aggressive vintage muscle cars people admired and dreamed about, this truck kept working. No spotlight. No recognition. Just miles and miles of hard labor. And over time that took a toll. These trucks weren't preserved. They were used, pushed, and eventually worn out. Engines failed. Frames rusted. Wooden beds cracked and disappeared. And when they finally gave out, Most were scrapped without a second thought, because back then it was just a truck. But every now and then one survives. Maybe it sat forgotten in a barn for decades. Maybe it was passed down through generations. Maybe someone saw value in it before anyone else did. And when those rare survivors show up today, they don't just look old. They feel different. You can see the wear in the wood, the scratches in the metal, the history in every detail. It's not just a vehicle anymore. It's a story of hard work, resilience there, and a time when machines were built to serve people, not impress them. And suddenly that forgotten work truck doesn't feel ordinary anymore. In fact, it starts to feel like one of the most powerful, forgotten legends of us cars' history. And here's the twist. The same truck that was once ignored and thrown away is now being brought back to life. Walk into a classic truck show today, and you'll see something surprising. Right next to polished chrome and roaring vintage muscle cars, there it is. Tall, rugged, quiet. A wooden bed work truck that somehow steals attention without trying. People don't gather around it because it's fast. They gather because it feels real. Because it reminds them of a time when success was built on effort, not image. And restoring one of these trucks? That's a different kind of passion. This isn't about making it perfect. It's about preserving the story. Keeping the wood as authentic as possible. Rebuilding the engine so it runs like it used to. Respecting every dent, every scratch, every mark it earned. Because those details matter. They tell the truth. And here's what makes it even more special. These trucks are rare now. Not because they were limited down, but because they were used until they couldn't go any further. So finding one today, especially with its original stake bed intact, that's like finding history you can actually touch. And that rarity is creating a quiet comeback. Collectors are starting to notice. Enthusiasts are starting to care. Because not every legend needs horsepower. Some of the greatest rare vintage car stories come from vehicles that never tried to be famous. And that's exactly why the 1948 Chevrolet 3800 still matters. It represents something we don't see much anymore. Honest engineering, purpose-driven design, unbreakable reliability. This truck helped farmers feed communities. It helped businesses grow. It helped build towns, roads, and opportunities. It didn't just exist in history. It helped create it. And maybe that's why it finally feels important again. Not because it's valuable, but because it meant something. So the next time you see one of these old stake bed trucks, sitting quietly at a show or rusting away somewhere forgotten, take a second look. Because you're not just looking at an old vehicle. You're looking at one of the most overlooked classic American cars. A true backbone of its time. A forgotten legend that never asked for attention, but earned it anyway. If you want to see more legendary cars and their stories come to life, make sure you subscribe.